We'll listen to the sweet ambience of Baldur's Gate 3 while we look at this. 25. It's 25 pages. Okay, so we have an official response. The defendant's official response in answer to the complaint that was originally filed, I guess. Where, like, up until this point, Ironmace has not actually entered in a response to the initial complaint. Also, they've noted here that they also are seeking a jury demand. Let's see what we've got. Defendants Ironmace Company Limited, Joo-Hoon Choi and Terrence Sangwa Park collectively answer the complaint filed by Nexon Korea Corporation as follows. Defendants are filing this answer subject to the dispositive motion to dismiss for form nonconvenience filed on June 22nd, 23, which is currently pending before the court, as set forth in greater detail below, expressly incorporate the defenses raised in that motion. The allegations contain argument and legal conclusions that are not directed at defendants and therefore do not require a response. To the extent any response is required, however, defendants admit that Nexon filed the instant complaint, which speaks for itself, admit that Choi and Park are former employees of Nexon who worked on a project referred to as the P3 project while at Nexon, and admit the defendants have developed a video game called Dark and Darker. Except as expressly admitted, defendants deny the allegations in paragraph 1. In addition, and without limiting the foregoing, defendants specifically and categorically deny that the defendants stole any materials from Nexon, that any of Nexon's materials were used to develop Dark and Darker, or that Dark and Darker is substantially similar to any game developed by Nexon. That's par for the course. I would expect to see that. Defendants admit that Nexon develops video games, and there was a development project that Nexon referred to as P3 in which Choi served as the director. They admit former Nexon employees who worked at P3 have joined Ironmace, including Park and Choi, except as expressly admitted, defendants deny the allegations in paragraph 2. In addition, and without limiting the foregoing, defendants specifically deny that Choi acted unlawfully, deny that Choi stole any assets, and deny that the defendants are exploiting any Nexon assets. Nexon threatened to take defendants' default Nexon threatened to take defendants' default if an answer was not promptly filed. Defendants believe that this is unnecessary exercise. Indeed, it's premature given that the motion to dismiss has not been adjudicated, but is consistent with Nexon's strategy to needlessly drive up the cost of this litigation. I kind of agree with this. I agree with this. I think that they're just sandbagging. I don't think that Nexon believes that they have a very strong case. I think they believe they have a case, but I don't believe that they have a strong one. I believe that the attorneys think, Nexon's attorneys think that they have a lot of billable hours if they try to force the hand. To the extent that any response is required to the headings or subheadings in Nexon's complaint, defendants deny the allegations in such headings. Okay. Defendants admit they developed Dark and Darker more quickly than a company as bureaucratic, inefficient, and uninspired as Nexon. Uninspired. Get fucked, dude. Could develop a game, and that defendants work to bring their vision to the gaming public as expeditiously as possible. Except as expressly admitted, defendants deny the allegation in paragraph 3. In addition, without limiting foregoing, defendants specifically deny that they stole any trade secrets and deny Nexon's P3 project operated with a team of 20 people working for 11 months. Defendants admit that Dark and Darker contains common fantasy tropes. Except with respect to the defendants, blah, blah, blah. Defendants specifically deny that Dark and Darker is substantially similar. Nexon, to any game developed by Nexon or that infringes on any protectable elements of any such game. Defendants deny the allegations in paragraph 5, including because any similarities in the look and feel of the games is a result of the games using publicly available assets, including from the Unreal Engine, and or because they are inspired by common tropes and themes used in fantasy works and video games. Without limiting the foregoing, defendants specifically deny that Choi stole any material from Nexon. The allegations contain argument and legal conclusions that are not, they deny everything in paragraph 6. Argument and legal conclusion not directed at defendants and therefore do not require a response. The allegations contain an argument and legal conclusions that are not directed at the defendants and therefore do not require a response. To the extent any response is required, however, defendants deny the allegations in paragraph 7. Defendants admit that Nexon is a developer of video games on various platforms. Except as expressly admitted, defendants lack knowledge or information sufficient to form a belief about the truth of the allegations in paragraph 8, and on this basis deny them. Because this was, this paragraph, Nexon said that they basically knew what they were doing. Defendants admit the allegations in paragraph 9, except the defendants do not purport to have developed the video game Dark and Darker. They did develop it. Defendants admit that Park is a U.S. citizen, is a former employee of Nexon, is the CEO of Ironmace, and was involved in the development and distribution. Except as expressly admitted, defendants deny the allegations in paragraph 10. In addition, without limiting the foregoing, defendants specifically deny that Park has lived in the U.S. at any time since 2005 and Park has ever owned property in the U.S. I thought that was ridiculous. They deny paragraph 11. Paragraph 12 doesn't require a response. Paragraph 13, the defendants admit that the court has subject matter jurisdiction over this action. Subject matter jurisdiction. The allegations set forth in 14 contain argument and legal conclusions that do not require a response to the extent that any response is required, submitting to the personal jurisdiction of the court, but deny that they have purposefully directed any activities to the state of Washington in the United States, or that they have purposefully availed themselves of the privilege of conducting activities in Washington and the United States. They further deny that the venue is appropriate in this court as set forth in greater detail, because they filed that motion to dismiss. Of course, they're going to say that. To the extent that any defendants dispute that the venue is appropriate in the court. Paragraph 16, outright deny them. The defendants lack knowledge or information sufficient to form an opinion. They lack knowledge or information sufficient to form a belief about the allegations of paragraph 17, and then deny them. So 16 and 17 they deny. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. They deny all of them because they don't say that they have the knowledge or information sufficient. 27. Defendants admit that Choi was hired by Nexon on April 16th, on or about April 16th. The data pretend signed all the agreements, except as expressly admitted. The rest of the stuff that's written up, they don't have enough knowledge or to form a belief on it, so they deny the rest of paragraph 27. Park was hired by Nexon on or about April 16th of 18. He signed the agreements. They deny everything else. P3, project referred to as P3, was developed by Nexon during the time period indicated. Defendants admit the allegations in paragraph 30, admit the allegations in 31. This is just like they worked here and they did stuff. Defendants admit that the stages of game development described in paragraph 32 are reasonably accurate in describing Nexon's typical game development process as defendants understand it. Okay. Defendants deny the allegations in paragraph 33, except that defendants lack knowledge or information sufficient to form a belief about the truth of the allegation that Nexon invested more than 1.1 billion Korean won in the P3 project, and on this basis deny it because they have no proof that actually is true. Because the defense, why would the defense have access to Nexon's books? Defendants lack knowledge or information sufficient to form a belief about the truth of the allegations in 34. Nexon failed to identify any of its trade secrets with sufficient particularity, and on this basis deny them, because that's true. They never did in their original complaint. They just said trade secrets. They didn't say which trade secrets. They didn't try to elaborate on what those trade secrets were or how they came to be. Defendants lack knowledge or information about paragraph 35. The formal results of any such internal playtests or market research were not shared with Choi and Park while they were employed by Nexon, and then on this basis deny them. They don't have enough knowledge in paragraph 36 because they didn't have that information when they were employed. They didn't have that information when they were employed in 37. Defendants admit that the P3 project team received a notification advancing P3 to the next stage of development on May 11th, except as expressly admitted. Defendants deny the allegations. Deny 39. Knowledge or information in paragraph 40. Because Nexon has failed to identify any of the trade secrets with sufficient particularity. Lack knowledge on 41. Admit the allegations in 42. Deny allegations in 44. Lack information on 43. Defendants deny that Choi acted without authorization or engaged in unlawful behavior. Defendants lack knowledge or information sufficient of 45. Defendants admit that Choi used Git on an external server but deny that such actions were unlawful. They lack knowledge about the rest of it and deny it. Defendants admit that Choi used Git on an external server, but deny, again, paragraph 47, deny it was unlawful. Defendants deny that the new development manager advised Choi and his team needing to come to the office. Wow, okay, that's new. Choi says that he never got told by the new development manager that he had to come into the office. So that's different. Defendants admit, paragraph 49, which server was necessary to fulfill Choi's jobs responsibilities at Nexon in light of performance limitations of Nexon's servers. So the angle that they're trying to say is that the servers that were in place at that point in time when he was working at Nexon were not sufficient, or the way that they were supposed to be used wasn't sufficient enough for Choi to do his job, so he had to do it himself, I guess. Choi stored certain P3 projects data on his home server, but denied that such actions were unlawful, all of which were necessary to fulfill Choi's job responsibilities at Nexon. P3 build files were uploaded to the external server, but necessary to fulfill Choi's job responsibilities. Admit P3 project files were exported to the external server. Project files and build files. So this one's build files, this one's project files. Necessary to fulfill Choi's job. Allegations paragraph 53, including because any such remote access was not adequate to fulfill Choi's job responsibilities at Nexon. So what they're trying to say is that the AWS servers and stuff that were already in place, that Nexon was providing its employees, the remote access capabilities of them were not good enough for Choi to do his job well, so he had to do it himself, is kind of like the gist. Now, whether or not that's true, obviously that, again, it all comes out in the wash, right? Like, we'll find out eventually. But this is interesting because this is the first time that we've heard anything from Ironmace's side to say, well, like, why, right? Defendants deny allegations in paragraph 54. Because no source code and art resources were ever stolen by defendants. Remember, just because they look similar doesn't mean that they're substantially similar. And unless they can prove that the source code was actually copied, all it is smoke, right? Like, Nexon can say, oh, you stole source code. All right, we'll prove it, you know? And they never put a request into the court to actually get the documents, and they could have done it, and they never did. So, who knows? Defendants deny allegations, paragraph 55. Lack knowledge or information. They don't know if it's true or not that there was an internal audit, because Nexon says there was, but they don't have any proof of that. Defendants deny all the allegations in paragraph 56. 57, 58. Deny. Defendants admit Nexon made demands regarding information purportedly in Choi's possession, but defendants lack knowledge or information sufficient to form a belief about the truth of the allegations in 59. On this basis, deny them. Answering paragraph 60, defendants admit that Choi initially attempted to resolve the dispute without recourse to legal process, but ultimately engaged legal counsel to defend himself against Nexon's allegations. Deny 61 through 65. Admit Choi was terminated on or about July 12th, except expressly admitted. So Choi was terminated, not quit. So we know that now. Defendants admit Park left Nexon on August 9th. Park left Nexon. Park quit, didn't get fired. And that 8 other former employees of Nexon ultimately went to work at Ironmace. Other than that, they deny. Defendants admit Park and Choi co-founded Ironmace on or about October 21. 8 other former employees ultimately went to work at Ironmace. Defendants admit that Choi is the controlling shareholder of Ironmace. Defendants admit that on or about, deny for 68 and 69. Defendants admit that on or about August of 22, they released a demo of Dark and Darker for download on Steam. Other than that, defendants deny allegations in paragraph 70, including because Dark and Darker is no way renamed, a renamed version of P3, and because Ironmace did not use Nexon's purported trade secrets to develop it. Because that was one of the things, because Nexon basically said that it was P3 with a different name on it. Dark and Darker did in fact go through concept, pre-production, prototyping, and early production stages of game development. So in this one, Nexon is saying the timeline's too fast because they didn't have to go through the concept stage, the pre-production, and the prototyping stage. They got to skip right past all of that to pre-production because they had already built all of that other stuff at Nexon. Defendants deny the allegations in 72 because Dark and Darker did in fact go through concept, blah, blah, blah. Okay, 74 through 76 deny. Lack knowledge of information, except that defendants expressly deny that any such materials were ever used by Ironmace or in the development of Dark and Darker. Okay, we didn't take your stuff. No, we didn't take your materials. We didn't take your materials. Deny. We didn't take your materials. We didn't take your materials. It's over and over and over again. Defendants deny. Defendants expressly deny any such materials were ever used. Any such materials. Deny materials. So many paragraphs of the same stuff. Defendants lack knowledge. Deny 92. Except defendants admit the source code is human readable instructions. Defendants acknowledge, I love this. This is a good sentence. Defendants acknowledge of information sufficient to form a belief about allegations in 93, and on this basis deny them. Except, defendants admit that the source code is human readable instructions that tell a computer how to execute a computer program. It's the most generic shit ever. Oh, it's good. I like that. That's good language. 94 to 97, deny. Defendants admit that the putative P3 game and Dark and Darker, like many other games, involve PvE elements. Defendants admit that the putative P3 game and Dark and Darker, like many other games, involved FPS elements, involved RPG elements, involved medieval-inspired settings by Dungeons and Dragons elements. Defendants deny, paragraph 107, admit Nexon does not own these ideas, admit the allegations in 108. Defendants admit these 6 character archetypes were contemplated as character classes for the P3 game. Okay, so they said, defendants admit that these 6 character archetypes were contemplated as character classes for the P3 game. So there was overlap in character classes, but they're basically saying, like, yeah, there was overlap in character classes, and we used the same classes in our game too, but that doesn't mean that we copied their game. And it doesn't. I mean, they're just class types. Defendants admit that these 6 characters, because that's like saying I'm gonna write a song. I want to write some music, right? So what I decided to do was, somebody decided, like, I used to work for this one guy, and I wrote a song using the first major scale. And then I moved over to this other place and started my own thing, and then I wrote another song using the same major scale. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're the same song. I mean, shit, dude, look at how many songs have the same chord progression, for fuck's sake. Defendants admit these 6 character archetypes included in classes, Bard... yeah, right. So, answering paragraph 110, defendants admit these 6 character archetypes are included, but Dark and Darker also has Bard and Warlock classes, which they've been putting out. See, like, and here's the mounting defense, right? And part of the reason why they've been putting out, like, constant teaser videos of, like, things still in development and, like, how they're changing the lighting around and how they're updating the maps and how they're slightly modifying, like, the clothing and, like, expanding upon the idea. when they're adding the Bard and the Warlock, and now they have video proof of game prototyping being done. They have YouTube posts of all of this iterative work that's been going on since all of this shit started, just to show, like, we weren't done yet. This isn't the game. This over here is going to be the game, right? Defendants deny the allegations in 111 because the Fighter, Cleric, Rogue, Wizard, Ranger, and Barb are the most standard and familiar Dungeons and Dragons classes. Let's see. In my team right now, I got a Barb, I got a Wizard, I got a Bard, and I got a Paladin, which is basically like a Fighter plus a Cleric, right? Fighter and Cleric had a love child, more or less. All right, deny the allegations in 112 because they mischaracterize the available classes in the described games. Deny 113, 114. Admit the P3 game would have included a menu for character selection. Except as expressly admitted, defendants lack knowledge or information sufficient, and on this basis deny them. Defendants admit that the P3 game would have included a menu for character selection. So they never even got to the menu for character selection in P3. I guess that wasn't even a thing. Defendants admit that Dark and Darker does have a menu for character selection. Defendants admit the images depict certain artwork for a P3 Barbarian character and Dark and Darker Barbarian character. So I'm waiting for them to get down to the zombie section because this is something that guys that are on the Discord, these guys that are like, the tinfoil folks that look into all the little details, right? They found some stuff that I forwarded off to the attorney, and I'm curious to see if it's in here. The images speak for themselves. Defendants deny Dark and Darker Barbarian copies any protectable expression in any depiction in the P3 game. Same thing here. Cleric copies, Fighter copies, Wizard, Rogue, Ranger. Defendants admit the allegations all through here. Defendants lack knowledge of information, except the defendants admit that 23 blah, 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 blah have the same names. Because these files consist of Unreal Engine or other third-party assets and plugins, or because they consist of descriptive labels that logically describe the content of the files and are formatted in and designed for compatibility with the Unreal Engine assets. So this paragraph talks about all the file names that are the same, but the ones that are really called into question that aren't for the Unreal Engine, if you omit all of those, there was 82 files that were left, or 86 files, something like that, and they were duplicates. So of the 86 files, they were double file names. There was like a UEXP file, and then there was another one that was the same name, just for a different portion of the engine, so it could be read right. So there was really like 41 or 43 actual like individual files, right? But some of them were literally named like Fireball. One of them is fireball.uexp. One of them is torch.uexp. Like really common like nomenclature that you would name any file if you were making a game. Okay, deny, admit, deny. The image, okay, here. Because the image that Nexon claims is from the P3 games is not from the P3 game at all, and was in fact taken from Dark and Darker. There it is. Paragraph 143, that's the zombie image right there. We did it, boys. We did it. We done did it. So this is in this section, and you can go and look at the original complaint. In paragraph 143, actually I can just pull that up. Okay, so 143. So, for example, P3 and Darker both feature the same fleshy, bald zombie with eyes that light up. So, they say that this is a picture of a P3 zombie, and that this is a picture of Dark and Darker zombie taken from the wiki for Dark and Darker. This is off of the Dark and Darker Wikipedia. This, though, we've proven, because of this little bit right here on the bottom, those icons, these icons are the Dark and Darker UI, and we can take them by the pixel and put them up against the actual icons that are located in the game, like the images for the icons in the game. You can take them by the pixel and line them up over top of each other, and they perfectly overlay each other by the pixel. Saint did it. Saint did it himself, and we put it in a YouTube video. So this is a Dark and Darker screen cap that they put in as evidence of P3 IP having been stolen, which is fucking wild, but it is what it is. Defendants admit the putative P3 game in Dark and Darker and many other games included a skeleton wizard, and such assets are publicly available through the Unreal Engine marketplace. Right. The allegations contain an argument and legal conclusions that are not directed at defendants and don't require response. Don't require response. Deny. Include torch-related game features that affect the lighting. Like many video games. Include torch-related game features that affect the lighting. Hang on. Gale, would you like to assist? There you go. Torch-related game features. Damn. All right. Deny. P3 and Darker are works of fiction. Defendants admit the game descriptions are accurate, but deny that they are substantially similar. Defendants lack knowledge or information sufficient to form a belief about the truth of allegations in paragraph 169. Deny them, except that the defendants expressly deny that the appearance of the P3 character classes is substantially similar to Nexon's artwork. Deny 170. Defendants admit they made Dark and Darker available for playtesting on Steam during the general time periods reference, admit that Steam is an online platform, and admit that Steam is owned by Valve, which defendants are informed and believe is headquartered in Bellevue, Washington. Okay, so they agree that Steam is located where Steam is. Dark and Darker playtests were available. Okay, defendants lack knowledge or information, and on this basis deny them in paragraph 172, but admit that the Dark and Darker playtests were available in the United States and many other countries worldwide. They don't understand. They don't have knowledge about 173. Admit 174. Defendants expressly deny that Dark and Darker infringes on any of Nexon's rights. Defendants deny that these actions targeted the United States. Remember, one of the reasons why the complaint was trying to get the court in Washington to hear it was because they said that the game was being overwhelmingly marketed to the Western and specifically United States markets. Defendants deny the allegations in 177. Oh, he's using strong language here. What's this one? What's 177? Used English language social media to target players in the United States. Ironmace communicated with Dark and Darker players about the playtest via Twitter, posting exclusively in English on an account with over 40,000 followers. So again, this Twitter account that they are referencing, though, isn't the Ironmace Twitter account. The one that they're referencing is this one. They said it had 40,000 followers, right? The one that they referenced and the one that they said in a statement, their declarations that said what it was that they were they were communicating to the English-speaking audience primarily on was this one, Dark and Darker EN, where it says right here, fan-made. This is not Ironmace Games. This is Ironmace Games. 63.5K. So they fucked that up too. But, you know, whatever. Defendants admit that Choi uses the name SDF, that he's not a native English speaker, and that he has attempted to communicate in English because it is a language commonly used worldwide. Oh, look, my name's in this, and so is Pest, and Jonah Vale. Let's see. 177, presumptuously and arrogantly assumes that the United States has a monopoly on the English language, which it does not. Defendants specifically deny that the use of the English language targets the United States. Defendants deny the allegations to the extent that it implies that conducting interviews in English targets the United States. However, defendants admit that Park conducted English language interviews with U.S. gamers like Onepeg, Pestily, and Jonah Vale about Dark and Darker. Hey, yeah, they did. That's true. We had those happen. Defendants expressly deny that they availed themselves of the privilege of entering into contracts in Washington and the United States and availed themselves of the protection of the laws of Washington and the United States. Lack knowledge about allegations in 181 pertaining to AWS's policies. Defendants expressly deny that they purposefully availed themselves of the privilege entering into contracts in Washington and the United States. Defendants have filed a motion to dismiss forum nonconvenience because Western District of Washington is an inconvenient place. Motion is currently pending before the court. Defendants refer to and incorporate by reference their responses to preceding paragraphs. Nexon has not identified its purported trade secrets with sufficient particularity. Sufficient particularity. Deny. Deny 195. And deny that Nexon is entitled to any relief whatsoever. Defendants referred to and incorporate by reference the responses preceding. Lack knowledge or information sufficient to perform a belief about the truth of the allegations of 197. Deny. As a further separate answer to Nexon's complaint and by way of affirmative defenses, defendants allege. First affirmative defense, forum nonconvenience. They say it's an inconvenient forum. We've talked about this ad nauseum. Second affirmative defense. Nexon is entitled to the relief sought in its complaint because its claims are fully offset by damages owed to defendants by virtue of Nexon's bad faith takedown under the DMCA. So they're seeking damages as a counter. Somebody's getting paid. Third affirmative defense, fair use. Nexon claims are barred by the fair use defense pursuant to 17 USC. Nexon's claims fail because Dark and Darker is an independent creation of defendants and or was independently developed by defendants. Sine fair. Nexon's claims fail because any purported similarities between Dark and Darker and any work created by Nexon are limited to sine fair or other expression not subjected to copyright protection. So what they're saying is they're similar in scenery, right? It's a fantasy dungeon crawler video game, and the only thing about that makes it similar to Nexon's project is that Nexon also had a fantasy dungeon crawler video game that was made from the same assets. That's it, most of the same assets. Sixth affirmative defense, de minimis. Nexon's claims fail because to the extent that defendants use any material of Nexon which defendants deny, such use was de minimis. Like there's so little was used between the two companies that is similar or would be considered like Nexon's property that it's so negligible of an amount, if anything at all, that it shouldn't matter. Nexon's claims fail to the extent that defendants had access to any of Nexon's trade secrets which defendants deny. Defendants did not use them because again they don't know what they are. Nexon's claims fail to the extent that defendants use any material of Nexon's which defendants deny. Public domain. Use was limited material in the public domain, meaning the public marketplace, or materials that is known to the public and freely available for use by the public, right? Because you can go to the marketplace and buy all of those assets yourselves for, you know, a few $100. Ninth affirmative defense. Innocent intent. Nexon's claims fail because to the extent the defendants used any material of Nexon's which defendants deny, such was innocent and not willful. So if there is something that ended up being very, very similar, it was accidental and was not something that they did consciously. Lack of registration. To the extent Nexon has failed to comply with the provision of 17 USC, Nexon's claims are limited and or barred. I'm not sure what lack of registration is. I'd have to look it up. 11th affirmative defense. Lack of reasonable efforts to maintain secrecy. Nexon's claims fail to the extent the defendants use any material. Nexon did not take adequate measures to maintain the secrecy of such material as to render the material a trade secret. So they're probably looking at this by saying that the guy that was supposed to be acting as the watchdog for the company didn't watchdog it effectively enough. And because of that, because they were just like, yeah, just get it done. Maybe they have email trail or something that says like, just get the fucking thing done. Like you got deadlines, just get it done. It could be that they're trying to play some angle, although I think this would be kind of weak if they tried to do that. Because they didn't have tight enough security, more or less. Because it's kind of weird, too. Like, I do kind of have to, like, whether it's right or wrong, I do kind of have to agree with that. Because, like, not until, what, a week and a half ago did they even realize that 2 of the employees that left took, like, a list of the assets that were being used from the Unreal Asset Store for the P3 game with them when they quit. And it's been, like, a year and a half to almost 2 years since they had left their employment. No improper means. Nexon's claims fail because defendants did not acquire such material by improper means. So, because the plaintiff Nexon is saying that they acquired what they have because they were stealing it, and defendants are like, no, we didn't. Copyright or trade secret misuse. Nexon is misusing its purported copyrights and or trade secrets for an anti-competitive purpose, as an unlawful restraint of trade, or otherwise in contravention of the purposes of U.S. copyright and trade secret law. Like, their copyrights are pretty damn general, man. Like, they're just, like, they filed a copyright on their source code, but didn't actually provide any copies of their source code. They just said source code, and that was their copyright. Extraterritoriality. Nexon's claims are barred because defendants' purported conduct took place entirely outside of the United States. To the extent that Nexon has suffered any damages which defendants deny, they were not caused by defendants, but other persons or entities for whom the defendants are not responsible. To the extent that Nexon is asserting any claims after the applicable statute of limitations period, such claims are barred. So they're trying to say that there's a statute of limitations. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on the claims that they're making, but Nexon has waived any right to obtain the relief sought on any of its purported claims, or it's stopped from obtaining such relief because they're trying to say, like, if the case were to get vacated, they shouldn't be entitled to anything. Unclean hands. By virtue of Nexon's own careless, negligent, and other wrongful conduct, Nexon should be barred from recovering against defendants by the equitable doctrine of unclean hands. So they're saying that Nexon pulled some shady shit, and in doing so should not be entitled to any relief because they were pulling shady shit. That's interesting too, because I haven't seen much of anything alleged by the defense other than like Nexon's lying through its fucking teeth in their complaints. Maybe that's what they mean. But I would say that carelessness would absolutely be evident in their own complaint, though, because they were careless as shit in their own complaint. They fucked up a bunch of shit. Yeah, the screenshot is pretty shady. Yeah, I don't know if they're referencing stuff that was going on like while they were employed. Like maybe there's some paper trail of stuff that the defense has where it's like, look, like these guys were pulling some stuff, you know, like they had us doing this shit and this shit over here, and like they made me sacrifice a goat in the break room, you know, like who knows. Nexon's claims are barred because Nexon consented to and ratified the conduct of defendants of which it complains. Defendants reserve the right to assert additional defenses in the event further factual development indicates they are proper. Defendants' prayer for relief. Wherefore, defendants pray judgment as follows. Nexon take nothing by way of its complaint, to that each and every purported claim for relief set forth in the complaint be dismissed with prejudice. With prejudice. With prejudice. Like, dismiss this shit and tell them not to come back here. Otherwise, they're going to end up having some problems. For costs of suit, including reasonable attorney fees included herein, for such other further relief as the court may deem just and proper in favor of the defendants. Certificate of service. There you go. Signed, Aaron J. Moss. All right. Well, there's an official response. Basically, one giant deny burger, and them saying that Nexon fabricated some shit. So the boys in the Discord showed that image. We figured that one out. You guys did good. I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, they've got to do something with the motion soon. God knows when. They're definitely having meetings behind closed doors, but they're not going to give us any type of transcript or anything until like an order gets signed. The judge will end up having maybe like an opinion write-up as part of the order, like, why they came to the conclusion that they did, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. But we'll have to just wait and see. In the meantime, it looks like they're going to have to provide outlines for Discovery in the next few weeks. So we'll just keep an eye on it, you know.